"Don't touch that book," Caleb Turner said, and the marble lobby went still enough to hear the stamp pad dry. The word denied sat wet and black across Eleanor Whitmore's papers while Marissa Cole reached for the old brown bank book as if it were trash. Caleb, denim jacket dusty, red toolbox open at his feet, placed one calloused hand on its edge. Lily whispered from the waiting chair, "Daddy, she's shaking." Then the book fell open to account number 0001, and bank president Victor Hale, stepping from the glass elevator, went pale. 3 hours earlier, the morning had begun with the smell of burnt coffee, motor oil, and pancakes Caleb had stretched with extra water because payday was still 2 days away. Lily sat at their small kitchen table in Cincinnati, coloring the same picture she always drew when she was nervous. Her father with a toolbox in one hand and a roof over both of them. Caleb kissed the top of her head, fastened the old watch that had belonged to his wife, and checked the repair order again. Whitmore National Bank, downtown branch, ATM service panel, camera sync issue. Nothing unusual, at least not on paper. By 8:30, the bank lobby was already polished into silence. Fluorescent lights hummed above white marble floors. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and expensive perfume. Caleb signed in as a contractor, clipped his badge crookedly to his jacket, and set Lily on a bench near the indoor plant where he could see her from the ATM alcove. She had half a day off school for a teacher conference, and he had no sitter, so she had brought crayons, crackers, and the careful quiet of a child who knew money was tight. Caleb knelt by the ATM, opened the service panel, and listened. Machines had voices if a man worked around them long enough. This one gave a soft double-click after every balance inquiry, just a breath late, like someone answering after being warned what to say. He frowned, wiped dust from the panel, and kept working. That was when the front doors sighed open and Eleanor Whitmore stepped inside. She was small beneath a gray wool coat, one gloved hand wrapped around a brown leather bankbook, the other holding a folded handkerchief. No jewelry except a thin wedding band. No entourage. No confidence borrowed from money. Just a woman walking slowly into a place that should have known her name. At the reception counter, she waited behind a man in a navy suit and a woman arguing about wire transfers. When her turn came, she placed the bankbook down with care, as if setting a sleeping bird on the counter. "I need someone to look this up, please," she said. Marissa Cole gave the book one glance, then the kind of smile that closed doors without appearing rude. "Ma'am, we don't process obsolete passbooks at the front counter." Eleanor swallowed. "It isn't obsolete. Do you have a current account number?" "That is the account number." Marissa's manicured finger paused on the cracked leather cover. A customer behind them chuckled under his breath. Caleb heard it and looked up from the ATM. Eleanor's cheeks colored, but her back stayed straight. "My husband told me this book would always open the right door," she said. Marissa lowered her voice, though not enough. Sometimes older clients become confused by sentimental documents. The stamp came down before Eleanor could answer. "Denied." The sound cracked through the lobby. Lily stopped coloring. Caleb rose slowly, rag still in his hand. He saw Marissa slide the book away from Eleanor, saw Eleanor's fingers reach after it and miss, saw Victor Hale appear at the elevator with 2 executives beside him. Caleb did not know the woman. He did not know her history. He only knew the look of someone being made small in public. So he stepped forward, and as the bankbook slipped, opened, and showed the faded line account number 0001 beneath an old Whitmore seal, Victor Hale's polished smile disappeared before anyone had asked him a single question. Victor Hale's polished smile vanished so quickly that only Caleb saw the crack before it sealed again. The bank president stepped forward with his hands folded low, his suit dark enough to swallow the cold lobby light, and his voice returned smooth as glass. "Let's all take a breath," he said. "No one is being denied dignity here." Marissa's fingers stayed on the brown bankbook. Eleanor's hand hovered over it, trembling, but not grabbing. Caleb kept his palm on the counter, not pressing down, just present, a quiet barrier between an old woman and a system that had already decided she was a problem. "Sir," Marissa said softly, This document triggered an obsolete record concern. Then print the concern, Caleb said. Show her what you found. That's not your role. Neither is taking her book. The words were not loud, but they landed. A woman near the deposit slips stopped filling out her form. A man in a charcoal coat lowered his phone. Lily sat very still on the bench by the indoor plant. Her crayon paused above the page, watching adults speak in the careful tones they used when something unfair was being dressed up as policy. Victor turned his attention to Caleb, and there was nothing rude in his face, which somehow made it worse. His eyes traveled from the crooked contractor badge on Caleb's denim jacket to the faded cuffs, then to the red toolbox opened by the ATM. "Mr. Turner, is it?" he asked, reading the badge. "Caleb Turner. You're here on a maintenance call." "Yes, sir." "Then I'm sure you understand how important it is for trained professionals to follow proper channels." The lobby smelled of lemon polish and printer toner. Somewhere behind the teller line, a cash counter clicked in neat, obedient bursts. Caleb looked at Eleanor. Her lips were pressed together, not in anger, but in the effort of remaining composed while strangers discussed her as if she were not standing there. "She asked for someone to look," Caleb said. "That's all." Marissa gave a small, practiced sigh, the kind meant to sound patient for anyone listening. "Ma'am," she said to Eleanor, "we deal with elder fraud every day. People bring in old documents, forged passbooks, family stories. We have a duty to protect vulnerable clients from confusion." Eleanor's eyes sharpened for the first time. "I am not confused." "Of course," Marissa replied too quickly. "No one is saying that." But she had said it without saying it, and everyone heard. Victor lifted one hand toward the security guard near the entrance. Not a command exactly, more like permission wrapped in courtesy. "Let's move this conversation to the private resolution room." Caleb glanced toward the room behind the frosted glass wall. It had 2 chairs, no customers, no witnesses, and a door that closed softly enough to make silence look voluntary. Eleanor saw it too. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her purse. From that purse slipped a folded white handkerchief, drifting down like a small defeated flag. It landed near Caleb's work boot. He bent before the guard could step closer. The handkerchief was clean but old, stitched at the corner with the letters EW in blue thread. Beside the initials was a small crest, not exactly the modern Whitmore logo glowing on the wall, but close enough to feel like a memory of it. Caleb picked it up carefully and held it out with both hands. "Mum." Eleanor took it from him. For 1 second, her composure almost broke. Not because he had rescued anything valuable, but because he had returned something small as if it mattered. "Thank you," she whispered. Victor saw the handkerchief. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. Marissa saw Victor see it, and her smile dimmed. "Mr. Turner," Victor said, still gentle, "I appreciate your concern, but compassion is not authorization." Caleb met his eyes. "Neither is humiliation." The air changed, not dramatically. No one gasped, no one shouted, but the tiny sounds of the bank seemed to step backward. The pen scratching at the loan desk stopped. The elevator doors opened and closed with no one getting out. Lily slid off the bench, came only 2 steps closer, then remembered what her father had told her about staying where he could see her. "Daddy?" she said, small and careful. "Did the lady do something wrong?" Caleb did not answer quickly. That mattered. He looked at Eleanor, at the bank book, at the denied stamp still wet across her papers. "No, sweetheart," he said at last. "She asked a question." Marissa's cheeks colored, but Victor's tone stayed polished. "And we are answering it responsibly. Then give her a receipt for the search." Caleb's voice stayed calm. "If the system found nothing, print that." Marissa looked down at her terminal. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, but did not move. "That won't be necessary." "Why not?" "Because the record is not valid. You checked it. The system checked it. Then the system can say so on paper." 3 short lines. 3 locked doors. Caleb could feel Victor watching him now, not like a nuisance anymore, but like a loose wire behind a wall. Victor stepped closer to Marissa and lowered his voice, but the marble carried sound in strange ways. "We don't need to generate anything yet," he murmured. "This is a containment matter." Caleb heard the word containment. Eleanor did too. She looked down at the brown bankbook as if seeing it not as proof, but as the last fragile bridge to a life everyone else was trying to erase. Victor straightened and gave the lobby a warm, presidential smile. "We're simply protecting Mrs." He paused, waiting for Eleanor to provide a name. "Whitmore," she said. The name passed through the lobby without impact for most people, but not for Victor. His eyes flicked, just once, to the old crest on her handkerchief, then to the line on the open book. "Account number 0001. Mrs. Whitmore," he repeated, a shade too carefully. "For your safety, I must insist we step into the private room." Caleb looked at the counter. Marissa had placed one manicured finger over the corner of the book, covering the old seal as if hiding a stain. And beneath her hand, still visible in faded ink, the first digit of 0001 seemed less like an account number than a warning. The first digit of 0001 sat under Marissa Cole's finger like something trying to breathe through glass. Caleb saw it, then saw Eleanor Whitmore's eyes lower to the same place, not with fear exactly, but with the tired sadness of a person watching strangers put their hands over pieces of her life. "Mrs. Whitmore," Victor Hale said, still wearing that calm executive voice. "This is precisely why we have protocols." Eleanor drew the handkerchief back into her palm. "I came to ask a question, and we're trying to protect you." "From my own question?" Victor smiled as if she had misunderstood kindness itself. Behind Caleb, Lily's crayon rolled off the bench and tapped once against the marble floor. The tiny sound made him turn. She had slid down to pick it up, but her eyes were on the old woman, not the crayon. Caleb knew that look. It was the same one she had worn in hospital waiting rooms when adults spoke gently over her head and called it comfort. He moved one step back, just enough to make sure Lily stayed in sight, then looked again at Marissa's hand on the bankbook. "You mentioned a document retrieval fee," he said. Marissa blinked. "That applies only if a manual archive search is authorized." "How much?" "Mr. Turner, that's not the point." "How much?" The lobby light washed over Victor's face, leaving no shadow for annoyance to hide in. Marissa checked the screen, though Caleb noticed she did not type anything new. $27.50, she said. Non-refundable. It was a small number in a building where people discussed mortgages, trusts, and wire transfers as if numbers had no weight. But Caleb felt every dollar of it. He pictured the refrigerator at home. Half a carton of eggs, pancake mix folded closed with a clothespin, 2 slices of bread saved for Lily's lunch. He reached for his wallet anyway. The leather was cracked at the fold, softened by years of back pockets and bad months. Inside were 3 tens, a 5, 2 ones, and the old hospital paper he kept because he never knew when billing offices would ask for proof again. Lily saw the bills and understood too much for 8 years old. "Daddy," she said softly, "that's dinner money." Caleb did not look embarrassed. He only gave her the kind of smile fathers use when they are quietly moving fear out of a child's way. "Tonight we'll make pancakes," he said. "Pancakes count as dinner." A man near the deposit table gave a little laugh. Not cruel exactly, but careless. Caleb laid $27.50 on the counter, smoothing the bills with 2 fingers so they would not look as tired as they were. "I'm not paying because she owes you," he said. "I'm paying because you owe her respect." Eleanor's breath caught. She did not reach for him. She did not thank him right away. Something in her face resisted making his kindness smaller by naming it too soon. Victor tilted his head, studying Caleb as if the man had just done something inefficient and therefore suspicious. "You realize," he said, "this does not grant you standing in this matter." Caleb nodded. "I'm not asking for standing." Marissa took the money with the reluctant precision of someone accepting evidence against her will. Her nails clicked over the keyboard. The terminal gave a soft tone, then another lower one. Caleb heard it from the ATM alcove, and the sound bothered him. It was not the cheerful confirmation chime of a normal fee entry. It was the same delayed double-click he had heard earlier from the service panel, the little hesitation of a machine being told to look away. On the screen, just before Marissa angled it back toward herself, Caleb saw a pale gray line flash and vanish. Manual hold. Founder archive. Not enough for anyone else. Too quick for accusation. But enough for a man who spent his life listening to machines confess in beeps, clicks, and pauses. Eleanor saw his eyes move. "What is it?" she asked. Caleb did not answer directly. He reached for the bank book instead. "May I?" he asked her, not Marissa, not Victor. Eleanor hesitated, then nodded. He lifted the brown leather book carefully. It was warmer than he expected, as if she had held it close for a long time. The cover was cracked at the corners, the old Whitmore seal worn nearly smooth. A faint dusting of black stamp ink had smeared onto the first page when it fell beneath the denied papers. Caleb took the napkin Lily had tucked beside her crackers, dampened one corner with a few drops from her water bottle, and gently wiped the ink away from the faded line. Account number 0001 became clearer. So did the old raised seal beside it. "Careful," Marissa said quickly. "That document has not been authenticated." Caleb paused. "Then you'll want it clean enough to read." Eleanor looked at Lily. The girl stood near the bench now, both hands holding her sketchbook against her chest, staying where her father could see her. "Your father teaches without preaching," Eleanor said quietly. Lily shrugged shyly. "He says people hear better when you don't yell." For the first time, Eleanor's guarded expression softened. Not trust, not yet, but recognition. As Caleb handed the bankbook back, the hospital paper slipped partly from his wallet and landed face up on the counter. He picked it up fast, almost by instinct, but not before the corner showed the printed words Whitmore Children's Relief Fund. Victor did not seem to notice. Marissa was still staring at the terminal. Eleanor did notice, though. Her eyes followed the paper as Caleb folded it away, and something old and painful moved behind them. Caleb returned to the ATM service panel, his hands still smelling faintly of leather, water, and stamp ink, and realized the fee he had paid had not merely opened a search. It had triggered a hidden archive someone inside the bank had tried to hold shut. The hidden archive did not open like a door. It flashed like a warning and disappeared before anyone in the lobby could prove they had seen it. Caleb stood beside the ATM service panel with the damp napkin still folded in his hand, the smell of old leather and stamp ink clinging to his fingers, and felt the situation tilt under his feet. Victor Hale had already begun to straighten it for everyone else. "This is exactly why we proceed carefully," he said, his voice warm enough for the customers and firm enough for the staff. "Unverified documents can trigger outdated system language. It does not mean there is an active account." Marissa nodded too quickly. "Correct. Sometimes old terms remain in inactive databases." Eleanor did not argue. She only held the brown bankbook closer to her coat, as if the little book had become colder in her hands. Caleb noticed that. He also noticed Victor's shoes had shifted half a step in front of the nearest ceiling camera, not blocking it completely, just enough to make the angle less useful. It was the kind of movement most people would never remember, because it looked like nothing. Caleb remembered small things. When life left a man with bills in one pocket and a child's medication schedule in the other, he learned to count details nobody else valued. "Mr. Turner," Victor said, turning toward him, "I understand you may have concerns, but a maintenance contractor interpreting bank records in a public lobby creates risk for everyone." A few heads turned toward Caleb. The word contractor hung in the air like a label someone had stuck on his forehead. Not father, not witness, not man. Contractor. The security guard near the door adjusted his belt. The man in the charcoal coat whispered something about liability. Lily heard enough to lower her sketchbook against her knees. Caleb did not look at the whispering man. He looked at the service panel. "I'm not interpreting her records," he said. "I'm listening to your machine." Marissa gave a small laugh that died before it became disrespectful. "The machine is not the issue. Then why did it answer before you finished typing?" That slowed the room, not stopped it. Not yet, but slowed it the way a hand slows when reaching toward a hot stove. Marissa's fingers remained above her keyboard. Victor's eyes settled on Caleb with a new kind of patience, the kind men used when deciding how to remove an obstacle without seeming unkind. Machines cache prompts, Victor said, especially after failed searches. That is normal. Caleb nodded once. He did not contradict him. He knelt back down by the ATM, where the service panel glowed blue against the polished floor. The fan inside the machine breathed warm dust and metal. A thin strip of diagnostic paper waited under the printer lip, not fully ejected. Its edge curled like a tongue held back. Caleb pressed the authorized service key attached to his contractor lanyard. The machine clicked. Lily took one small step from the bench, then stopped where she knew she was allowed to stand. "Daddy," she said softly. It made that sad beep again. She was 8. She did not know systems. She did not know archives. But she knew sounds, and the lobby heard her because children sometimes say simple things adults cannot polish away. Caleb looked back at her. "I heard it too, sweetheart." Victor smiled toward Lily, a perfect public smile. Sometimes machines sound unhappy when they are being repaired. Lily looked down, embarrassed, and Caleb felt a small burn behind his ribs, but he kept his voice low. "She's not being difficult. She's telling me what she noticed." Eleanor's eyes moved from Lily to Caleb. There was no trust in them yet, not fully, but there was attention. For the first time, she seemed less alone in the room. The diagnostic strip slid out with a soft mechanical whir. Caleb tore it cleanly, not fast, not dramatic, and held it near the light spilling from the ATM screen. He was careful not to wave it like proof. Proof had to stand on its own legs. The first lines were ordinary. Power cycle.
Camera SYNT.
Terminal handshake. Then, beneath the fee entry Marissa had processed, came a line in small gray print. 942 Founder Archive Query Suppressed. Caleb read it once, then again. He felt his thumb tighten against the paper, but his face stayed still. "What does that say?" Eleanor asked. Victor stepped forward. "It likely says nothing relevant." Caleb did not move the paper away. "It says Founder Archive Query Suppressed." A thin silence opened. Not the final silence. Not the kind that changes a room forever. Just the first kind. The kind that tells people they may have laughed too early. Marissa swallowed. That could be an automated lockout. Old record. No active file. The system suppresses dead pathways all the time. Dead pathways don't trigger after a paid retrieval fee, Caleb said. Not unless something points to them. Victor's face remained composed, but his answer came a fraction too fast. That archive is sealed. Eleanor's hand tightened around the bankbook. Caleb looked up. Marissa looked at Victor. Even the security guard glanced over, because sealed was a different word from non-existent. Victor corrected himself almost immediately. I mean, if such an archive exists, it would be restricted, naturally. The marble lobby seemed to hold its breath around the correction. Caleb folded the diagnostic slip once and placed it carefully in his denim jacket pocket beside his contractor badge. Not hiding it, just protecting it from being taken before anyone understood what it meant. Victor's smile thinned. "Mr. Turner, I need you to return to the work you were hired to do." Caleb stood slowly. The old watch on his wrist caught the overhead light. "I am," he said. "Your machine just reported a suppression at 9:42. Eleanor looked down at account number 0001, then up at Victor Hale, and for the first time her voice changed from hurt to something steadier. "How did you know it was sealed? How did you know it was sealed?" Eleanor asked, and the question did something no accusation had done. It made Victor Hale pause. Not long enough for guilt, not clearly enough for proof, but long enough for Caleb to hear the air conditioning hum above the teller windows and for Marissa Cole's fingers to stop moving over the keyboard. Victor recovered with the grace of a man who had spent years turning corners into hallways. "Mrs. Whitmore, sealed is a standard administrative term. For something you said did not exist?" Caleb asked. Victor turned toward him slowly, and the warmth in his expression narrowed by a single degree. "Mr. Turner, May I speak with you privately for a moment? The security guard shifted near the front doors. A printer behind the counter coughed once, then went quiet. Lily sat back down on the bench, hugging her sketchbook to her chest, watching her father the way children watch weather move across a window. Caleb looked at Eleanor first. "I'll stay where you can see me," he said. He did not say it loudly. He did not say it like a challenge. But Eleanor heard the respect in it, and so did Victor. They stepped only as far as the glass elevator alcove, where the marble gave way to a strip of dark carpet and the sound of the lobby dulled just enough for a powerful man to pretend privacy. Victor kept his hands folded. His cuff links flashed silver when he moved. "You seem like a decent man," he said. "A father, I assume." Caleb glanced back. Lily had bent over her page again, but her crayon was not moving. "Yes. Then I'll speak plainly. This bank contracts your company for multiple branches. I can extend that work. 6 months. Maybe more. Better hours. Health coverage options." Caleb's face did not change, but something under his ribs pulled tight. Health coverage was not an abstract phrase to a widower with an 8-year-old daughter and a drawer full of medical bills. Victor knew that. Men like Victor always learned where the door was before they knocked. "All I'm asking," Victor continued, "is that you let professionals handle a vulnerable client with care. Public confusion helps no one." Caleb's hand drifted to the old watch on his wrist, the one his wife had worn on a chain when hospital bracelets made her hands too thin for jewelry. The leather band was cracked. The second hand ticked steadily, indifferent to fear. "You're offering me work to stop asking about the machine?" Victor's smile stayed soft. "I'm offering you stability to avoid misunderstanding." "Same sentence," Caleb said. "Different suit." For the first time, Victor's jaw tightened and stayed that way. Caleb turned back toward the counter before Victor could answer. He did not walk fast. He did not make a scene. Every step sounded measured against the stone floor, the steps of a man refusing to be rushed into anger. Marissa's eyes followed him. Eleanor's hand rested on the bank book. The brown leather looked smaller now beneath the bright lobby lights, older, almost fragile. But the faded account number 0001 still held its place like a nail in wood. Caleb reached the ATM service panel, crouched, and slid the diagnostic slip out of his jacket pocket. "Mr. Turner," Victor called from behind him, voice smooth again. "That paper belongs to internal systems." Caleb looked up. "You haven't seen what it says." The words were simple, but they hit the room with more force than volume could have. A woman at the deposit table stopped uncapping her pen. The man in the charcoal coat lowered his phone all the way. Marissa's throat moved. Caleb held the slip by its edges and set it on the counter, not in front of Victor, but beside Eleanor's bank book, where she could see it too. "This is a contractor diagnostic," he said. "It doesn't show balances. It doesn't show private customer data. It shows machine events." Marissa reached for it. Caleb did not snatch it away. He only placed 2 fingers gently on the paper and looked at her. "Please don't take it from her side of the counter." Something in that sentence changed Eleanor's breathing. She had been treated like an object to manage, a risk to contain, a frail woman to move from one room to another. Caleb had just made the counter hers again. Marissa drew her hand back. Victor stepped closer, still smiling for the lobby. "There is no need to alarm customers with technical language." "Then I'll keep it plain." Caleb pointed to the small gray line beneath the earlier timestamp. The first line said Founder Archive Query Suppressed. This line says the suppression was not automatic. He paused, not for drama, but to let the words arrive clean. It says Executive Override. The lobby quieted in layers. First the whispers stopped. Then the cash counter behind the teller line clicked off. Then even the security guard's radio seemed too loud against his shoulder. Marissa leaned in despite herself. "That could mean several things." "Yes," Caleb said. "It means someone with executive clearance told the system not to return the search." Victor gave a patient sigh. "Or it means an old file was restricted because it is not suitable for public processing." Again, standard protection. Eleanor looked at him. Protection from whom? Victor did not answer her. Instead, he addressed the room without appearing to. We are committed to preventing fraud against seniors, especially when third parties become involved. The phrase third parties floated toward Caleb like a polite accusation. Lily heard it. Her little face tightened, and she looked down at her father's red toolbox as if it might somehow defend him. Caleb saw her fear and softened his voice. It's okay, Lil. Are we in trouble? She asked. No, he said. We're just telling the truth slowly. Eleanor's eyes shifted to him then, and for the first time, she did something small but deliberate. She slid the brown bankbook 1 inch closer to Caleb, not surrendering it, not making him her champion, but allowing him to stand near it. Read the rest, she said. Victor's smile faded again. Mrs. Whitmore, I strongly advise against allowing a contractor to handle documents you may not fully understand. Eleanor's hand settled flat on the counter. The veins beneath her skin looked blue and delicate, but her fingers did not shake. I understand being dismissed, she said. I understand that very well. Caleb looked at the diagnostic slip again. Beneath executive override was a partial authorization tag, not a full name, not enough to convict anyone of anything, but enough to make the room feel smaller around Victor Hale. The letters were printed faintly, as if the machine itself were reluctant to say them aloud. VH exec pending confirmation. Caleb did not announce it yet. He did not need to. Marissa saw his eyes stop. Victor saw Marissa see him stop. And in that narrow triangle of glances, the first real proof opened a door much larger than an old woman's bankbook. The letters VH exec did not shout from the diagnostic slip. They sat there faint and gray, half buried in the paper fibers. The kind of small thing a hurried person could miss and a careful person could not forget. Caleb saw them. Marissa saw that he saw them. Victor Hale saw both of them see it. And in that tiny exchange the lobby changed shape. That is enough, Victor said, still soft, but the softness had lost its warmth. We are not conducting internal review in front of customers. Caleb did not lift the paper like a weapon. He kept it flat beside Eleanor's brown bankbook, 2 pieces of quiet evidence resting on the cold marble counter. I agree, he said. This needs review. Privately. Properly. The word landed between them. Victor's eyes narrowed, not much, just enough for Caleb to know he had touched the place where the suit ended and the fear began. Eleanor looked at the diagnostic slip, then at the bankbook, then slowly opened the old leather cover as though the room had become a church and every movement needed reverence. My husband used to say a bank was not built out of stone, she said. It was built out of promises people were afraid to trust anywhere else. Victor inhaled through his nose. Mrs. Whitmore, with respect, sentimental history does not override modern compliance. Eleanor reached into the inside pocket of her gray wool coat. Marissa stiffened, as if the old woman might produce something dangerous. What came out was only a cream envelope, soft at the corners, sealed years ago and reopened many times. Eleanor drew from it a black and white photograph. The paper had curled slightly with age. In the picture, a much younger Eleanor stood on the front steps of Whitmore National Bank, beside a tall man in a dark hat. Behind them was the same building, younger and cleaner, with the same bronze doors, the same carved crest, and the same old seal Caleb had just wiped free of stamp ink. In Eleanor's hands in the photograph was the brown bankbook. Not a similar one. The same one. The cracked lower corner matched. The dark stain near the spine matched. Even the little brass clasp, bent slightly to the left, matched. Marissa leaned closer despite herself. That could be a family keepsake, she said, but her voice had thinned. Eleanor turned the photograph over. In faded blue ink were the words account 0001, never to be closed. Beneath them was a signature that matched the founder's name carved in brass on the lobby wall. Caleb followed the letters from the photo to the wall, then to the seal in the bankbook, and felt the first cold outline of the truth pass through him. This was not an old woman clinging to a memory. This was a memory the building itself had been built around. Victor stepped in quickly. Many founding documents are ceremonial. They do not necessarily carry operational authority. Then why suppress the query? Caleb asked. You're drawing conclusions from incomplete technical data. No, Caleb said quietly. I'm asking why complete data was stopped. The cash counter behind the teller line clicked 3 times and stopped. No one restarted it. Eleanor's hand trembled as she placed the photograph beside the bank book, but her voice held. I came today because the board wants my final vote on the merger by Friday. A few customers looked up at the word merger. Victor's expression hardened into concern so polished it almost looked humane. That business is not relevant to this service issue. It is relevant to why my account disappeared. No one made anything disappear. Then why am I being moved into a room with frosted glass? Caleb looked toward the private resolution room. For the first time, the name on the door seemed less like help and more like a curtain. Eleanor continued, not louder, but steadier. If I am declared unable to manage my own affairs, my voting authority passes temporarily to the executive committee. If the merger goes through, the community relief funds are absorbed into administrative assets. The small pensions, the elder accounts, the children's fund. The last words struck Caleb in a place he had not armored. The children's fund. His hand went to his wallet before he decided to move. Inside, folded behind his license and a grocery coupon he had not used, was the hospital paper he had carried for years. He had kept it because widowed fathers kept records like sandbags against the next flood. He unfolded it slowly. The paper was creased white at the edges, the ink fading but legible. Lily Turner, partial surgical assistance approved. Whitmore Children's Relief Fund. Caleb stared at the line as if seeing it for the first time, though he had seen it 100 times under kitchen light, under hospital light, under the weak lamp beside Lily's bed. He had never thought about the name. When your child was sick, gratitude did not always have room for investigation. It only had room for breathing through the next hour. Lily stood from the bench, confused by her father's silence. Daddy! He did not answer right away. He placed the hospital paper beside the photograph, not to beg, not to accuse, but because truth had begun arranging itself without needing him to decorate it. Eleanor looked down. Her fingers touched the edge of the paper, stopped at Lily's name, then moved to the fund name. Her mouth parted. Your little girl was one of ours, she whispered. The lobby seemed to dim around the sentence. Caleb felt Lily's small hand find the back of his jacket. He reached behind without looking and touched her fingers once, enough to tell her he was still there. Victor's voice cut in too fast. That fund has been inactive for years. Marissa turned to him. Caleb turned too. Eleanor did not move at all. On the hospital paper, the approval date sat plainly beneath the fund name, less than 3 years old. Caleb slid it a little farther into the light so no one had to lean to see it. Then why did it help my daughter after you say it died? He asked. Victor's lips parted, then closed. A bead of sweat appeared near his temple, small and bright under the fluorescent lights. He reached into his jacket, took out his phone, looked at the screen, and silenced it without answering. The phone buzzed again in his hand. This time he turned it face down on the counter. Eleanor saw the motion. So did Caleb. Marissa looked from the diagnostic slip to the audit terminal, then toward the ceiling camera Victor had stepped in front of earlier. Mr. Hale, she said carefully. Should I call legal? No, Victor said, and the word came too sharp for the lobby he was trying to calm. He corrected himself instantly. Not yet. We don't want to escalate a misunderstanding. Caleb looked at the row of objects now lying in the open. The bank book, the old photograph, the hospital paper, the diagnostic slip with executive override, and the faint letters Vich exec waiting like a fingerprint not yet lifted. He could have said Victor's name. He could have pushed the room toward outrage. Instead, he chose dignity over revenge, because Eleanor was still standing in the place where they had tried to make her small, and Lily was still learning what strength looked like when it refused to become cruelty. This isn't a misunderstanding anymore, Caleb said. It's a record. And as Victor reached for the photograph, Eleanor placed her hand over it first, gentle but immovable, making it clear that whatever truth had just entered the lobby would not be carried behind a closed door. They did not go into the private resolution room. Eleanor Whitmore kept her hand over the old photograph. Caleb Turner kept the diagnostic slip flat beside the brown bank book, and the truth remained in the open where the first insult had happened. The lobby of Whitmore National Bank had changed without anyone moving the furniture. The same marble floor shone under the same fluorescent lights. The same brass logo glowed on the wall. But now every customer who had pretended not to listen was listening, and every teller behind the counter had slowed down enough for silence to become part of the room. Victor Hale looked at the row of objects on the counter and smiled as though he had chosen this stage himself. "All right," he said, lifting both hands slightly, palms open, harmless. "Since there seems to be concern, let us handle this transparently." Marissa Cole stood beside the terminal, her face pale beneath the careful makeup. The security guard remained near the door, uncertain now, no longer stepping forward but not stepping back either. Lily stood behind Caleb's left side, close enough to touch his jacket, far enough to stay safe. Her sketchbook was hugged to her chest, the top page bent where her fingers pressed too hard. Caleb felt the tremor in her hand when she found the hem of his denim jacket. He did not look down, but he moved 1 inch closer so she knew he knew. Victor turned toward the customers with the sorrowful expression of a man forced to correct a painful misunderstanding. "What you are seeing," he said, "is an old charitable reference, an inactive archive marker, and an emotional client attaching personal history to outdated documents. It happens more often than you think. Our duty is not to embarrass Mrs. Whitmore. Our duty is to protect her." The word protect spread across the lobby like a clean cloth laid over a stain. A few customers shifted. The man in the charcoal coat nodded once, almost relieved to have a simple explanation. Marissa glanced at Victor, then down at the counter. Caleb watched her hands. They were no longer steady. Victor continued. "As for the maintenance printout, internal systems use executive tags for many automated functions. VH does not necessarily refer to a person. It may mean verification hold, vault history, vendor halt. Technical abbreviations can be misleading. For a moment it worked. Not completely, but enough." The room loosened. Doubt returned because doubt was easier than believing a bank president would erase an old woman in public. Caleb did not fight the room. He had learned long ago that pushing scared people too hard only made them cling to the nearest authority. He placed one hand on the red toolbox at his feet, grounding himself in the only authority he had ever truly owned. "Work done carefully, promises kept quietly. Then print the audit receipt," he said. Victor's gaze moved to him. "Excuse me? If it is a verification hold, the audit receipt will say so." Marissa's eyes flicked to the terminal. "That requires a supervisor authorization." "You're standing beside the bank president," Caleb said. "Should be enough." The line was calm, almost plain, and that made it sharper. A woman near the deposit slips covered her mouth, not in amusement but in recognition. Victor's smile held, but the skin around it tightened. "Mr. Turner, audit trails contain sensitive operational data." "Then redact what you need to," Caleb said. "But don't bury what happened to her." Eleanor looked at him then, not as if he were rescuing her, but as if he had just named the thing she had come to find out. Victor stepped closer to the counter. His reflection stretched across the marble beside the old bank book. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, lowering his voice just enough to sound intimate and public at once. "I am asking you to let us resolve this with dignity." Eleanor looked toward the frosted glass room. The words "Private Resolution Room" sat across the door in silver lettering, elegant and empty. "Dignity does not require hiding," she said. The first crack in the public story appeared not in Victor's face, but in Marissa's. She swallowed, turned to her terminal, and placed her fingers over the keys. Victor's head snapped slightly toward her. "Marissa!" She stopped. He softened his tone instantly. "Let's not create unnecessary confusion." Caleb looked at the evidence on the counter and began. Not like a lawyer, not like a man trying to win, but like a father explaining why spilled milk mattered when the floor was already wet. This book showed account number 0001 before anyone searched anything. The handkerchief has the same old crest as the seal on the book. The photograph shows Mrs. Whitmore holding this same bank book on the day this branch opened. He touched nothing he did not own. He only pointed one item at a time, letting people see the order. The hospital paper shows the Whitmore Children's Relief Fund helped my daughter less than 3 years ago, after Mr. Hale said it had been inactive for years. The diagnostic slip shows the archive query was suppressed after the retrieval fee was paid. That does not prove everything, but it proves enough to stop moving her behind glass. Lily's fingers tightened on his jacket. "Daddy," she whispered. "The red stamp is still on her paper." It was such a small thing. A child's observation, not evidence in any official sense. But everyone looked. The black word "denied" still sat across Eleanor's papers, wet at the edges where Caleb had cleaned the bank book but not the insult. Eleanor saw it too. Her face did not crumble. It steadied. Victor turned quickly to Marissa. "Print a courtesy receipt," he said. "Not an audit trail. A simple note that the matter is under review." Marissa did not move. "That would not show the override," she said before she could stop herself. The lobby went tight again. Victor's eyes narrowed. "No one asked you to interpret it." Caleb said nothing. He did not need to. Marissa looked at Eleanor, then at Lily, then at the old woman's hand resting over the photograph as if guarding a grave. Slowly, she turned back to the terminal. "I can print the failed query receipt," she said. "Branch code, time access tag. No balances. No private account data." Victor's voice dropped. "Marissa, I am instructing you to pause." Her hand hovered. The printer beneath the counter gave a tiny waking click, ready before she touched the key. Caleb heard it. So did Lily. "That's the same click," Lily whispered. But this time she did not sound afraid. Marissa pressed enter. The receipt printed with a thin mechanical whine. It seemed too small for the amount of air it pulled from the room. She tore it free and placed it beside the diagnostic slip. At the top was the branch code. Beneath it, the timestamp, 9:42. Beneath that, in clean black letters, was the access tag, VHexec. Victor reached for the receipt. Caleb did not grab his wrist. Eleanor did not shout. Marissa simply picked up the receipt first and slid it toward Eleanor's side of the counter. "It belongs with the complaint file," she said, her voice shaking but clear. Victor's face changed then. Not into panic. He was too practiced for that. It changed into calculation. He took out his phone and turned away slightly, angling his shoulder toward the ceiling camera. "I'll bring legal in," he said. "Privately." Marissa looked up at the black dome above the lobby, then at the phone in his hand. "The lobby camera is active again," she said. Caleb's repair had restored the sync. Victor froze for half a second. Then he smiled as if freezing had been his intention. "Good," he said. "Then everything will be clear." But when Marissa reached for the desk phone to call legal counsel through the recorded branch line, Victor stepped forward and covered the receiver with his hand. Not violently, not loudly, just enough. The camera above them saw it. The customers saw it. Eleanor saw it. Caleb looked at that hand, then at the audit receipt, then at the bankbook account number 0001 waiting under the cold lobby light. "Private rooms are for privacy," he said, "not for burying people." Marissa pulled the receiver free, dialed with trembling fingers, and set the call to the large terminal screen facing the lobby. As the legal counsel line began to ring, she lifted Eleanor's brown bankbook toward the scanner, and the old Whitmore seal passed beneath the red beam for the first time in years. The red scanner beam passed beneath the old Whitmore seal, and for one heartbeat nothing happened. The lobby held still around the brown bankbook, around Eleanor Whitmore's hand resting beside it, around Caleb Turner standing with Lily tucked safely behind his jacket. Then the terminal screen blinked once, twice, and the legal counsel line connected with a soft chime that sounded too gentle for the weight of what had opened. A woman's face appeared on the large screen, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, seated somewhere under warmer office light. This is Helen Ward, General Counsel for Whitmore National Bank. State the purpose of the emergency verification. Victor stepped forward too quickly. Helen, this is a branch-level elder fraud concern. I'm handling it. Marissa's voice trembled, but she did not step back. Counsel, we scanned a Founder Archive instrument tied to account number 0001. The audit trail shows VHexec suppression at 9:42. Helen Ward's expression changed. Not dramatically, just enough. She leaned toward her camera. Place the instrument flat under the scanner again. Do not remove it from view. The room went so quiet. Caleb could hear Lily breathing through her nose, slow and careful, the way he had taught her during hospital nights. Eleanor did as instructed. Her gloved fingers brushed the cracked leather cover, then withdrew. The scanner moved again, a thin red line traveling over the old seal, the faded account number, the worn brass clasp bent slightly to the left. On the terminal, a loading circle spun. Victor's phone buzzed face down on the counter. No one touched it. The screen flashed from gray to white, then filled with black letters. Founder Trust Ledger. Account number 0001. Final voting authority, Eleanor Whitmore. Elder Dignity Clause active. For several seconds, nobody spoke. A pen slipped from the fingers of the man in the charcoal coat and tapped against the marble. The sound seemed to travel all the way up the glass walls. Marissa covered her mouth. The security guard lowered his hand from his radio. Victor Hale stared at the screen as if the words had been written in a language he had hoped was dead. Helen Ward's voice returned, colder now. Mrs. Whitmore's Founder Trust Authority cannot be overridden by branch administration, executive office, or merger committee. Who authorized suppression of the query? Victor swallowed. Helen, there is context. The audit receipt is visible on camera, Helen said. Read the access tag. Marissa lifted the receipt with both hands. It shook lightly in the fluorescent light. VHexec. Victor smiled, but it no longer fit his face. Verification hold. That is what I tried to explain. These abbreviations can be misleading. Caleb did not move. He did not argue. He only looked toward the black dome camera above the lobby, the one he had restored less than an hour earlier. Marissa followed his eyes. So did Helen Ward. Pull lobby replay from 9:40 to 9:44, Helen ordered. On the branch screen, Victor's head turned sharply. That is not necessary in front of customers. Eleanor looked at him then, calm in a way that made his urgency feel louder. Neither was denying me in front of them. Marissa tapped the keyboard. The large screen split. On one side remained the Founder Trust Ledger. On the other, the lobby camera replay began. The angle was high, slightly wide, the sound faint but clear enough. They watched Eleanor approach the counter. They watched Marissa take the bank book. They watched Victor step from the elevator before the search was complete. Then, at 9:42, the footage showed Victor lifting 2 fingers in a small signal toward Marissa, then leaning close enough to say words the camera microphone caught in fragments. Suppress the archive. Move her private. The replay continued. Caleb saw himself at the ATM, still kneeling, not yet involved. He saw Lily coloring on the bench. He saw the denied stamp come down. He saw Eleanor's shoulders sink and straighten again. No one in the lobby laughed now. No one whispered. The evidence had taken all the air that gossip needed to survive. Victor's hand moved toward his tie, then stopped midway. His mouth opened once. That was a compliance precaution. Helen Ward did not blink. You suppressed a Founder Trust inquiry before review, denied public receipt, attempted private removal of a voting authority holder, and interfered with a recorded legal escalation. Victor's face drained of the last color it had been holding. He looked away from the camera, then back to Eleanor, then at the brown bank book as if it had betrayed him by surviving. She is an old woman with sentimental papers, he said, and the moment the words left his mouth, even he seemed to know they could not be retrieved. The screen behind him still read Final Voting Authority. Eleanor Whitmore. The bank book still lay open. The red denied stamp still stained her papers. The hospital document with Lily's name still rested beside the photograph, proving the fund he had called inactive had once reached into Caleb's broken life and helped keep his daughter whole. Eleanor stood slowly. Caleb instinctively shifted, ready to steady her if she needed it, but she did not. She placed one hand on the counter, not because she was weak, but because the counter was hers now in a way it had not been when she walked in. Her voice was quiet enough that everyone had to lean their attention toward it. "My husband built this bank for people who were afraid to enter one," Victor said. Nothing. A file folder slid from beneath his arm and landed against his shoe. He did not pick it up. Eleanor turned to Helen Ward on the screen. "Under the Elder Dignity Clause, I am freezing the merger vote pending independent audit. I am also requesting immediate preservation of all branch footage, executive overrides, charity fund transfers, and elder account conversions for the past 18 months. Helen nodded. Recorded and acknowledged. Eleanor looked toward the security guard, then toward Victor, not with revenge, but with the grave sadness of someone seeing how far a promise had been bent. "Do not escort me out of my bank," she said. "Escort Mr. Hale away from operational systems." The guard hesitated only long enough to understand that the room had changed. Then he stepped toward Victor with a gentleness that made the reversal even sharper. Victor did not fight. He gathered nothing. His phone buzzed again on the counter, alone and unanswered. Caleb felt Lily's small hand slide into his. "Daddy?" she whispered. "Is the lady safe now?" Caleb looked at Eleanor, at the bank book, at the screen full of proof, and at the lobby full of people who could no longer pretend they had not seen. "Safer," he said softly. "But truth still has work to do." Eleanor turned toward him then, and in the silence after justice began, the question was no longer whether Caleb would be believed, but what a man like him would do when recognition finally reached his door.